In our headlines on this Wednesday afternoon, August 7th, here in South Korea. Korea's female table tennis team is advancing to the medal round at the Summer Games in Paris. And should it win one, it will mark the country's first table tennis team Olympic medal in 16 years. Meanwhile, Korea logged a current account surplus of almost $12.3 billion in June, the highest in nearly 7 years, with chips bolstering exports. And over in the Middle East, the man who masterminded the October 7th assault against Israel is named new leader of the Palestinian militant group Hamas. Korea's table tennis team players are batting their way to the medal rounds, warming up for some tough matches ahead. Our Searing covers their agenda and more.
The South Korean women's table tennis team is closing in on a chance to add another medal in the sport for the country. The trio of Shin Yoo-bin, Chun Ji-hee, and Lee Eun-hae cruised past Sweden 3-0 in the quarterfinals of the women's team event to advance to the semifinals. However, their next match won't be an easy one. South Korea will play the winner of the quarterfinal match on Wednesday between China and Chinese Taipei, as the top-ranked China is favored to win. China boasts the top 3 singles table tennis players. But even if Team Korea loses in the semifinals, it'll have a chance in the bronze medal match to win its first Team Olympic medal in 16 years. And just like the women's team, the men's team also cruised to the next round, beating Croatia 3-0 in the first knockout round. The trio of Chang Woo-jin, Cho Dae-sung, and Im Jong-hoon defeated Croatia in straight sets, advancing to the quarterfinals. But advancing to the medal rounds will be tougher for the men's team, as they're set to face off against the table tennis powerhouse China in the quarterfinals. Since the men's team event's Olympic debut in 2008, China has won every gold medal so far. Over on the men's 3-meter springboard event, South Korea's Woo Ha-ram and Lee Jae-kyung advanced to the semifinals on Tuesday, with the top 18 divers out of a pool of 25 advancing to the next round. Woo finished 12th, while Lee finished 16th. Woo finished 4th in the event during the last Olympics in Tokyo, the best Olympic performance by a South Korean diver. South Korea will look to add a few more medals over the next few days, with Taekwondo and women's golf competitions starting on Wednesday. Taekwondo will begin with the lightest weight class at under 58 kilograms, as Park Tae-jun is considered a medal hopeful. Meanwhile, former world #1 Ko Jin-young and 6-time LPGA Tour winners Kim Hyo-joo and Yang Hee-young will be competing in the women's golf tournament on Wednesday. South Koreans failed to medal in the last Olympics in Tokyo. South Korea currently has 11 gold, 8 silver, and 7 bronze medals in Paris, with the chance to add a few more to their tally. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Also in Paris, on the sidelines of the Olympics, Korea's traditional attire and tasty delights are garnering public attention as well. Our Choi Soo-young shows us how.
Models wearing traditional Korean clothing hanbok appeared at Korea House located in Paris. 7 hanbok designers showcased their works inspired by the idea of a girl who participated in the 1900 Paris World Expo, returning to the city over 100 years later for the Paris Olympics. The designers reinterpreted outfits traditionally worn for weddings or coming-of-age ceremonies, receiving compliments from both visitors and the Paris fashion scene. Traditional Korean crafts also caught people's attention.
We put a lot of thought into presenting works that reinterpret Korean traditional culture, reflecting both its original and modern aspects, and considering how to approach it from a future perspective.
Outside Korea House, a replica of a Korean market street has been set up. Visitors can experience Korean culture as well as watch K-pop dance competitions. The booth selling tteokbokki, dumplings and chicken ribeye are so popular that visitors often have to line up and wait. K-snack has become all the rage in Paris so much so that the daily supplies of 500 servings sell out quickly.
The food was absolutely great. The kimchi was really delicious. We didn't know much about Korea, but now we've learned more and want to visit Korea.
Korean literature events featuring young Korean and local writers and various Korean culture events took place across Paris. In Paris, Hallyu has become a new key trend. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
And global interest in the Korean wave is also fueling greater interest in the Korean language, whose instructors from different parts of the world are gathered here to engage in ways to enhance the learning experience. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports.
When Bai Maganbetova Dilbar first started learning Korean 10 years ago, she never imagined where it would take her. A former student at the King Sejong Institute in Kazakhstan, she was drawn to the beauty of the language and now teaches at the very place where she picked it up. Now, she has become the first foreign national to win the grand prize, the highest honor at the World Korean Educator Conference's Outstanding Educator Award.
한국어는 제 일이고, 제 과거이고, 그리고 현재이고, 제 미래이라고 생각합니다. 네, 앞으로도 한국어를 더 열심히 공부하고 학생들에게 한국어를 더 재미있게 가르칠 수 있는 그런 선생님이 되고 싶습니다.
Every summer, hundreds of Korean language instructors from around the world gather in Korea for this conference.
The World Korean Educator Conference is a platform to honor teachers from King Sejong Institutes worldwide who work to spread the Korean language and Korean culture. It also provides training to enhance their teaching skills.
The King Sejong Institute, run by the King Sejong Institute Foundation under the Culture Ministry, is dedicated to teaching Korean language and culture to non-native speakers. With over 250 branches in more than 80 countries, the institute has seen a surge in students eager to learn Korean. This growing interest makes discovering the most effective teaching strategies crucial. Bai Maganbetova wanted to make what she found challenging when learning Korean easier, so she decided to add a fun twist.
수업 시간에 조금 약간 5분, 10분 정도 게임을 하고 학생들에게 그렇게 어휘나 문법을 설명하거나 연습을 합니다.
Until Friday, these passionate instructors will learn and practice the latest techniques, including integrating the latest technology and trends like short-form content. One of the participants, Zanabekz Begimai, was the first student of the King Sejong Institute in Kyrgyzstan, where she teaches now.
한국어를 가르쳐주신 선생님들의 방식대로 제가 배운 것 그대로 그냥 가르치고 있는 것 같아요. 뭐 수업 중에 뭐 한국 관련 뭐 동영상 보여주거나 아니면 뭐 드라마 같은 거 조금씩 보여주고 아니면 그 노래들 있잖아요. 애기들이童謡.
The theme of this year's World Korean Educator Conference is Teaching Korean is a Wonderful Thing. Through this, participants will explore how to make learning Korean a truly wonderful experience for their students. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
Korea recorded its largest current account surplus in some 7 years in June on the back of strong shipments of semiconductors overseas. Our correspondent Moon Hye-ryan has the latest.
With the semiconductor boom, South Korea's trade balance in June posted its largest surplus in nearly 7 years. Preliminary data from the Bank of Korea on Wednesday showed that the country's current account surplus came to $12.26 billion. It's the largest since September 2017 and marks the second month in a row that the trade balance has been in the black. With this latest data, the current account balance in the first half of the year tallied up to nearly $38 billion, a notable rebound from the $1.1 billion recorded the year before during the same period. This far exceeds the central bank's earlier forecast, which predicted that the current account balance would log just under $28 billion between January to June this year. These latest figures for June were driven by a solid goods account of $11.4 billion, which marks 15 months of continuous growth and is the highest sum recorded since September 2020.
This comes due to continuous strong semiconductor exports, which reached an all-time high due to a rise in demand for AI-related industries and higher memory chip prices.
The goods account tracks imports and exports amounted to nearly $59 billion with thriving outbound shipments of semiconductors. Chip exports increased by more than 50% year-on-year, along with a rise in exports for information and communication equipment, petroleum products and passenger vehicles. Imports, on the other hand, fell by 5% year-on-year and came to some $47 billion. However, the service balance, which includes earnings and spending on overseas trips and transport, was in the red by $1.62 billion. In particular, the travel sector accounted for a deficit of $900 million, meaning that people were spending more to travel to other countries. Meanwhile, the primary account balance responsible for monitoring foreign workers' wages and overseas dividend payments reported a surplus of under $2.7 billion. 문혜련, Arirang News.
In other news, government efforts to ease the fallout from the liquidity crisis that e-commerce platforms Tmall and We Make Price continue, and now also include pledges of policy reforms to prevent a similar scenario. Our An Sung-jin explains.
The crisis surrounding e-commerce platforms Tmall and We Make Price still persists, with enraged sellers and customers looking for concrete solutions. During an economic ministerial meeting held on Wednesday, the government discussed additional measures to respond to the chaos as well as policies to prevent similar crises in the future.
The government has put together solutions for financial support. We will begin by completing the refund process for product buyers.
To assist the process, the government will be cooperating with credit card companies, electronic payment service providers, and travel agencies to give out refunds as quickly as possible. For those customers who seek a refund from travel, lodging, and airline companies, the government will also be collecting applications for collective dispute mediation by the end of this week and begin the mediation process next week. For vendors that haven't received payments, additional liquidity support worth 1.2 trillion won or $870 million will be provided from the central and local governments. Starting from Wednesday, businesses that have been affected can extend their loans and guarantees by up to a year. Meanwhile, to prevent another e-commerce crisis in the future, the government will establish regulations for e-commerce platforms to prevent them from using payments from vendors as liquidity.
We will be pushing for fundamental policy reform to prevent damage like this from happening again.
Existing regulations on retail and electronic transactions will also be revised so e-commerce platforms have a shorter payment period than huge retailers. Measures discussed in Wednesday's meeting will become more concrete within the month. Delays in payments from the two e-commerce retailers began in July when their mother company, the Singapore-based platform Qoo10, was reportedly in a tight financial situation. This led to unilateral cancellations of orders, leading to financial damage for both vendors and customers. More than 3,000 vendors have been affected, suffering total damages of 278 billion won, or roughly $200 million as of August 1st. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Moving on to the tech front, one of Samsung's fifth-generation high-bandwidth memory chips, or HBM3E, has passed Nvidia's tests for use in its artificial intelligence processors. Now, citing unnamed sources, Reuters reported on Wednesday that the two companies will soon seal a supply deal for the approved 8-layer chips, adding that the deliveries will begin within the final quarter of this year. Meanwhile, the Korean chipmaker's 12-layer version of the chips has yet to pass Nvidia's tests. In the U.S., Vice President Kamala Harris has tapped Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate for the presidential election. Our Choi Min-jung has details.
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has chosen Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota as her running mate. Walz was chosen from half a dozen Democrats on Tuesday morning after Harris held in-person interviews with the candidates. The two made their first campaign appearance together at a rally in Philadelphia later in the day, where Harris introduced Walz as the vice president America deserves.
Because he's the kind of person who makes people feel like they belong and then inspires them to dream big. And that's the kind of vice president he will be. And that's the kind of vice president America deserves.
Harris also highlighted Walz's political record as one that ticks the boxes in supporting her goal to fight for the middle class. Harris noted that Walz was the first governor in the U.S. to sign a law enshrining abortion as a right, paid leave for women, and voting rights. It was also noted that her running mate expanded background checks and increased penalties for sales of illegal firearms. One expert says Walz's diverse blue-collar background makes him somebody who could be quite popular.
He worked as a high school social studies teacher. He coached football in Minnesota before getting into politics. He has a military background with the U.S. Army National Guard. So, too, he worked as a member of Congress for Minnesota before taking over as Minnesota's governor in 2019. So he knows the legislative side and the executive side. So even though
the expert added that Walz has been active on social media and called Republican presidential and vice presidential candidates Donald Trump and J.D. Vance weird. He took aim at his competition again on Tuesday's rally.
I got to tell you, pointing out just an observation of mine that I made. I just have to say it. You know it, you feel it. These guys are creepy and yes, just weird as hell. That's what you see. That's what you see.
The Trump campaign attacked Tim Walz, labeling him as far-left and dangerously liberal. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in the Middle East, the man who planned the appalling October 7th assault against Israel last year has been named as the new leader of the Palestinian militant group Hamas. Our Peunji reports.
Hamas has chosen Yahya Sinwar as its new leader to replace Ismail Haniyeh, who was assassinated in a presumed Israeli strike in Iran. 61-year-old Sinwar is seen by Israel as the mastermind behind the planning and execution of the October 7th attack, when Hamas killed more than 1,000 people and took over 200 others as hostages. Sinwar has not been seen in public since the devastating attacks, defying Israel's attempts to kill him since the start of the war. The appointment of the new Hamas leader comes as Israel braces for a likely attack from Iran and Iranian-backed Lebanese group Hezbollah. Iran has reportedly vowed to carry out a revenge attack against Israel over Haniyeh's killing in Tehran, and Hezbollah also threatened to retaliate in response to the killing of its military commander by Israel last week, without specifying the form or timing of the attack. While Israel remains on alert, the U.S. says it does not believe Iran or Hezbollah has taken retaliatory action against Israel yet, as Washington continues to make efforts to de-escalate tensions in the Middle East.
Last night, I do want to add that while we do not believe the response has started yet, we remain concerned by the increase in violence, including the firing drones by Hezbollah into Israel.
Amid growing fears that the situation could escalate into an all-out regional war, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said ceasefire negotiations have now reached a final stage, and that Washington is working with Egypt and Qatar to finalize an agreement as soon as possible. Peunji, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. We begin today in the US, where a Chinese academic has been convicted of illegally acting as a foreign agent for Beijing. Following a week-long trial in Brooklyn Federal Court, a jury found 75-year-old Wang Shujun guilty on all 4 counts of an indictment which includes acting and conspiring to act as an agent of a foreign government without prior notification to the US Attorney General, criminal use of identification, and making false statements to law enforcement. Assistant Attorney General Matthew G. Olson of the Justice Department's National Security Division said that the defendant infiltrated a New York-based advocacy group masquerading as a pro-democracy activist, all while covertly collecting and reporting sensitive information and sharing his findings with 4 spy officials of China's Ministry of State Security. Wang emigrated to America in 1994 and is a naturalized U.S. citizen. He was arrested in March 2022 and is scheduled to be sentenced on January 9, 2025, facing up to 25 years in prison. Violent far-right protests and riots that spread across a number of towns and cities in the UK over the space of a week have seen more than 400 people arrested and 100 of them charged. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that sufficient police will be on the streets to handle the upcoming protests.
That we do have adequate police in place, that we are able to cope with this disorder. But the message has to go to those who are involving themselves in this disorder, which is you're wrong, you shouldn't be doing it, and you will feel the full force of the law, as I hope we've been able to demonstrate with these swift prosecutions.
Protests first erupted the night after 3 children were killed in the Southport stabbing attacks after false rumors circulated that the suspect was a Muslim asylum seeker. Prime Minister Starmer has condemned the riots as far-right thuggery and on Monday said that he vows to ramp up criminal justice to deal with the anti-Muslim, anti-immigrant riots. Starmer added that the fact that the protests were being held in multiple different locations has made it more difficult for the police to react. Climate activists released a video on Tuesday showing them spraying footballer Lionel Messi's Ibiza mansion with red and black paint, before vandalizing the white facade of the famed Argentinian footballer's house on Spain's Ibiza island. 2 members of the Futura Vegetal group stood in front of the mansion holding a banner that said, "Help the planet, eat the rich, abolish the police." In a statement, the group claimed the mansion near Calatarida Cove was an illegal construction, saying that they aim to exhibit the responsibility of the rich for the climate crisis. Messi, who currently plays for Inter Miami in the US, bought the house in 2022 for around $12 million. A Chinese-American teenager is vying to set a record as the youngest person to fly solo to all 7 continents to raise donations for research into childhood cancer. 19-year-old Ethan Guo plans to cover 50,000 miles over 100 days with stops in 60 countries in his bid to raise up to $1 million. Guo began his journey in May in Memphis, Tennessee, US, and has so far visited 7 countries while making multiple overnight stops to get to Switzerland's Geneva on Tuesday. He has now jetted off towards Heraklion in Greece. Guo started learning to fly at 13 years old and received his pilot's license at 17. Kim Xiang, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The sweltering heat continues to blanket Korea on this Ipchu, the onset of autumn based on the seasonal calendar. A heat wave warning remains in place in most parts. Gyeongju in Gyeongsang-Pukdo province was one of the hottest places yesterday, with temperatures going above 37 degrees Celsius. And due to the atmospheric instability, we are seeing frequent heavy rain throughout tonight. We need to brace for up to 60 millimeters of showers. Gyeongsang-Pukdo province in particular will need to prepare for buckets of rain. Also, those having summer vacation near the water need to be mindful of sudden rain during the day today. Temperatures should go up as high as yesterday, topping out at 33 degrees here in the capital. Gwangju topping out at 34 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Intense heat shows no sign of easing up through next week. Take good care. Many seem to be coming down with summer colds. Stay nourished and hydrated. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session, and today we address Korea's population-related matters. Do stay with us.